Lounge. We are the Jews. This is Good for the Jews. I am Larry Rosen.
I'm Eric Goldbrener.
And we are surrounded by microphones. Eric, why don't you explain to me what's going on here?
Well, we're using these microphones to convert the sound pressure, the air pressure that comes out of our mouth, into electrical signals. And then those signals are going into our computers, getting converted.
Okay, I think I knew that, but I was kind of hoping you would explain to our listener, Sharon.
Yeah. Thank you, Sharon, for your excellent feedback. You're on the show.
Thank you, Sharon. Actually, let me digress a little bit. First, I want to thank my mom, Sam and Kimmel, even though I don't even think they listened to the last one. In fact, I don't think anybody listened to the last one except Sharon, which brings up a conundrum. Sharon wants to be on the show, but if Sharon's on the show, there's nobody left to listen to the show.
If Sharon's going to be on the show, we're going to end up with so many listeners.
Really?
Yeah,
Is
that
Sharon
girl's
popular?
funny. She ought to be.
Well, it doesn't matter if you're funny. You just got to be popular.
She's popular.
By the way,
smart.
Sharon, I do know your husband, Bob. Well, I know so that he wears shorts.
Yeah, so much for the no name dropping on this show. But
I didn't say his last name.
What bothers me is if you had 3 listeners, 2 of whom were family members, and now we've lost all the listeners.
Gone.
Right? I mean, I've been trying to, not be offensive. I haven't been calling.
No,
names.
I don't know. I'm flummoxed.
Mocking anyone?
Well, you were discussing with me earlier a lot of really exciting ideas about expanding our reach.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem. The reach is like, I got my 50 people who were excited about the first one and maybe we're busy.
I think if we'd get a bigger audience if we're doing is
totally
it good for the Hindus?
Because we're only, 8%?
Right. Is it good for the Cantonese?
What percent of the world's population are Jews?
Oh, I would say Jews are probably a third of a percent.
Wow. See, I thought it was 8%, but that's
8%?
not
8%?
No.
You got 7 billion people on Earth. You got like 15 million Jews. Do the math.
Yeah, okay. Only 15 million of us.
Right, so that's what, 0.5%.
Where do you come down on the interfaith thing? Let me explain why. The little backstory here. I am part of an interfaith relationship, as you know. Famously, my wife is famously not Jewish.
Yeah.
When our young...
That's bad for the Jews. We're trying to get her on board.
I know.
Listen, just having her in the community is good for the Jews.
Look, everyone has tried to get her on board, and she just steadfastly refuses to be on anyone's.
There is a movement to try to de-Judify you and embrace her.
Okay, so
I don't know if you're aware of that.
That's what I'm asking. Yeah.
I don't support that. I think it's bad for the Jews. I think Larry's good for the Jews, just so we're clear.
I don't think that movement actually has anything to do with religion. No. It has to do with personality type. But
true.
I'm saying, though, on a more global level, when our child was born and the sticky issue of circumcision arose, she said she would do it if it was accompanied by religious rite. And I said, I wanted to do it because, hey, Dad, what's this? Sorry, son, can't help you. So we decided to have a bris. We were living in Seattle at the time. I was teaching a Catholic school. We had a heck of a time rounding up 12 Jews, but we did. But the issue was the first place we called to get a moil refused.
Because you're interfaith.
Right.
Right.
The second place said, are you kidding? We need all the Jews we can get.
Right.
So what are your feelings? Do we need all the Jews we can get? Or is 15 million enough?
Oh, well...
This is like an assimilation question. It's the whole thing. Do we need all the Jews we can get? If I'm not really, I'm sure, a very high percentage of what's the word I'm looking for? Not technical. I don't know. But a high percentage of serious Jews would not consider me Jewish.
Okay, so you're touching on a really important issue. It's an important issue to Jews. It came up years ago when I was in college, and all the Russian immigrants were starting to immigrate to Israel.
Yeah.
And the Israelis realized they didn't have a clear criteria for determining who was a Jew, and of course the Orthodox control the religious world.
But even though I could decide tomorrow I want to emigrate, and they would go, sweet, come be a citizen.
Yeah, I think they would, because I think it's pretty clear by any stretch of the imagination that you're a Jew. You had a Jewish mother. You had a bar mitzvah.
I did have a bar mitzvah.
It's
I'm really neurotic.
Easy for you to show you're a Jew. When I was a kid, there was this really big campaign to convince Jews to marry in the faith and to stay Jewish, and intermarriage was really being touted as the number one threat to the Jewish people.
Well, I could make an argument against that.
Well, so could I, because based on my
We
experience,
got plenty of threats that aren't as existential.
well, in America, okay, they're saying, what the danger to Jews in America was assimilation. We were going to get watered down, diluted to the point where there no longer was a Jewish identity and really a viable Jewish people, and it was going to happen through intermarriage. And that's what I was raised with. And and by the way, my mom at one point also married a non-Jew and had similar problems as you, finding a rabbi and all that. Okay, but that's after I was born.
What was he? What religion was he?
He had no religion,
Oh,
but his
some
parents
kind
were
of Christian
Catholic
thing?
Italians.
Oh, okay, yeah, same thing.
But he was an atheist, agnostic, but didn't matter. He was not of Jewish
Jew.
extraction.
Not a Jew.
Here's where I stand on the whole thing. I believe this is where American Jews have got it right. And by observation, I think that we've figured out how to address this problem. First of all, I want to remind you that I don't know where this prohibition against marrying non-Jews comes from. I mean, Moses married a non-Jew. David married a non-Jew. The prophets of Israel all married out of the tribe.
If Jews didn't marry non-Jews, there'd be no Muslims.
Yes, that's right. I don't think that was what
Leah?
Abraham. Yeah, I don't think they were married. I think she was a concubine or a handmaid or something like that.
I just declared a fatwa on you.
All right, I'll watch out. But the point is, American Jews are getting this right. You know why? Because American Jews are intermarrying at a rate of like 65, 70%. And you know what I'm saying is the Jews in our community, the Jews are bringing their non-Jewish spouses into the community, and they're bringing their children into the covenant.
And some of our non-Jewish spouses are completely dominating, like mine.
Exactly, like yours. And,
she's an asset.
We have another friend, my good friend, my best friend. He's not Jewish. His wife was Jewish, but she's from a Russian extraction, not really raised with any formal Judaism. She's from the USSR, and he really takes it seriously. He became a Jew. He joined the covenant. He's active in the community. So my point here is that, do you have to be born a Jew and raised a Jew? I mean, I was born a Jew, raised a Jew, went through all that, married a Jewish woman, but me and my wife will have nothing to do with the synagogue. We're both atheists. So we have a real hard time
Which, of course,
fitting into
as
the
we
religious.
have discussed, makes you no less Jewish.
Right, unless the criteria, is set
super
by the
theological,
Orthodox. Yeah. So my point is, I always believe Jewish people, we're a culture, we're a civilization, we're a nation. And
which I believe
non-Jews can join us.
We discussed that on the Great Lost episode of Is It Good for the Jews?
That's right. On the Great Lost. That's right. So intermarriage in America apparently is good for the Jews, because this existential threat that's posed by intermarriage, I don't see it happening. I see that intermarried people are having Jewish families, Jewish households, and they're reinventing Judaism.
I am example. I'm totally example one. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's wrong with that?
Because I tell you what,
it's working. Excellent. Good on you. Keep it up.
All right. My child attending a Jewish day school had nothing. It would have been no more likely had I married a Jewish woman.
There's plenty of people that I grew up with. They went to Hebrew school with me.
We are the Jews. This is Good for the Jews. I am Larry Rosen.
I'm Eric Goldbrener.
And we are surrounded by microphones. Eric, why don't you explain to me what's going on here?
Well, we're using these microphones to convert the sound pressure, the air pressure that comes out of our mouth, into electrical signals. And then those signals are going into our computers, getting converted.
Okay, I think I knew that, but I was kind of hoping you would explain to our listener, Sharon.
Thank you, Sharon, for your excellent feedback. You're on the show.
Thank you, Sharon. Actually, let me digress a little bit. First, I want to thank my mom, Sam and Kimmel, even though I don't even think they listened to the last one. In fact, I don't think anybody listened to the last one except Sharon, which brings up a conundrum. Sharon wants to be on the show, but if Sharon's on the show, there's nobody left to listen to the show. If
Sharon's going to be on the show, we're going to end up with so many listeners.
Really?
Yeah,
is
that
Sharon
girl's
popular?
Funny. She ought to be.
Well, it doesn't matter if you're funny. You just got to be popular.
She's popular.
By the way, smart. Sharon, I do know your husband, Bob, Well, I know so that he wears shorts.
Yeah, so much for the no name dropping on this show. But
I didn't say his last name.
what bothers me is if you had 3 listeners, 2 of whom were family members, and now we've lost all the listeners. Right? I mean, I've been trying to, not be offensive. I haven't been calling.
No,
names.
I don't know. I'm flummoxed.
I think anyone.
Well, you were discussing with me earlier a lot of really exciting ideas about expanding our reach.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem. The reach is like, I got my 50 people who were excited about the first one, and maybe we're busy.
I think if we'd get a bigger audience if we're doing is
totally
it good for the Hindus?
Because we're only, 8%?
Right. Is it good for the Cantonese?
What percent of the world's population are Jews?
Oh, I would say Jews are probably a third of a percent.
Wow. See, I thought it was 8%, but that's
8%?
not 8%.
Well, you got 7 billion people on Earth. You got like 15 million Jews. Do the math.
Yeah, okay. Only 15 million of us.
Right, so that's what, 0.5%.
Where do you come down on the interfaith thing? Let me explain why. The little backstory here. I am part of an interfaith relationship, as you know. Famously, my wife is famously not Jewish.
Yeah.
When our young...
That's bad for the Jews. We're trying to get her on board.
I know.
Listen, just having her in the community is good for the Jews.
Look, everyone has tried to get her on board, and she just steadfastly refuses to be on anyone's.
There is a movement to try to de-Judify you and embrace her.
Okay, so
I don't know if you're aware of that.
That's what I'm asking. Yeah.
I don't support that. I think it's bad for the Jews. I think Larry's good for the Jews, just so we're clear.
I don't think that movement actually has anything to do with religion. No. It has to do with personality type. But
true.
I'm saying, though, on a more global level, when our child was born and the sticky issue of circumcision arose, she said she would do it if it was accompanied by religious rite. And I said, I wanted to do it because, hey, Dad, what's this? Sorry, son, can't help you. So we decided to have a bris. We were living in Seattle at the time. I was teaching a Catholic school. We had a heck of a time rounding up 12 Jews, but we did. But the issue was the first place we called to get a moil refused.
Because you're interfaith.
Right.
Right.
The second place said, are you kidding? We need all the Jews we can get.
Right.
So what are your feelings? Do we need all the Jews we can get? Or is 15 million enough?
Oh, well.
This is like an assimilation question. It's the whole thing. Do we need all the Jews we can get? If I'm not really, I'm sure, a very high percentage of what's the word I'm looking for? Not technical. I don't know. But a high percentage of serious Jews would not consider me Jewish.
Okay, so you're touching on a really important issue. It's an important issue to Jews. It came up years ago when I was in college, and all the Russian immigrants were starting to immigrate to Israel.
Yeah.
And the Israelis realized they didn't have a clear criteria for determining who was a Jew, and of course the Orthodox control the religious world.
But even though I could decide tomorrow I want to emigrate, and they would go, sweet, come be a citizen.
Yeah, I think they would, because I think it's pretty clear by any stretch of the imagination that you're a Jew. You had a Jewish mother. You had a bar mitzvah.
I did have a bar mitzvah.
It's
I'm really neurotic.
Easy for you to show you're a Jew. When I was a kid, there was this really big campaign to convince Jews to marry in the faith and to stay Jewish, and intermarriage was really being touted as the number one threat to the Jewish people.
Well, I could make an argument against that.
Well, so could I, because based on my experience,
we got plenty of threats that aren't as existential.
Well, in America, okay, they're saying, the danger to Jews in America was assimilation. We were going to get watered down, diluted to the point where there no longer was a Jewish identity and really a viable Jewish people, and it was going to happen through intermarriage. And that's what I was raised with. And and by the way, my mom at one point also married a non-Jew and had similar problems as you, finding a rabbi and all that. Okay, but that's after I was born.
What was he? What religion was he?
He had no religion.
Oh,
but his
some
parents
kind
were
of Christian
Catholic
thing?
Italians.
Oh, okay, yeah, same thing.
But he was an atheist, agnostic. But didn't matter. He was not of Jewish extraction.
Not a Jew.
Here's where I stand on the whole thing. I believe this is where American Jews have got it right. And by observation, I think that we've figured out how to address this problem. First of all, I want to remind you that I don't know where this prohibition against marrying non-Jews comes from. I mean, Moses married a non-Jew. David married a non-Jew. The prophets of Israel all married out of the tribe.
If Jews didn't marry non-Jews, there'd be no Muslims.
Yes, that's right. I don't think that was
With
what
Leia?
Abraham. Yeah, I don't think they were married. I think she was a concubine or a handmaid or something like that.
I just declared a fatwa on you.
All right, I'll watch out. But the point is, American Jews are getting this right. You know why? Because American Jews are intermarrying at a rate of like 65, 70%. And you know what I'm seeing is the Jews in our community, you know, the Jews are bringing their non-Jewish spouses into the community, and they're bringing their children into the covenant.
And some of our non-Jewish spouses are completely dominating, like mine.
Exactly, like yours. And,
She's an asset.
You know, we have another friend, my good friend, you know, my best friend. He's not Jewish. His wife was Jewish, but she's from a Russian extraction, not really raised with any formal Judaism. She's from the USSR, and he really takes it seriously. He became a Jew. He joined the covenant. He's active in the community. So my point here is that, you know, do you have to be born a Jew and raised a Jew? I mean, I was born a Jew, raised a Jew, went through all that, married a Jewish woman, but me and my wife will have nothing to do with the synagogue. We're both atheists. So we have a real hard time
Which, of course,
fitting into
as
the
we have
religious.
discussed, makes you no less Jewish.
Right, unless the criteria, you know, is set
super
by the
theological,
Orthodox. Yeah. So my point is, I always believe Jewish people, you know, we're a culture, we're a civilization, we're a nation.
Yeah.
You know, and
Which I believe
non-Jews can join us.
we
you know?
discussed that on the Great Lost episode of Is It Good for the Jews?
That's right. On the Great Loss. That's right. So intermarriage in America apparently is good for the Jews because this existential threat that's posed by intermarriage, I don't see it happening. I see that intermarried people are having Jewish families, Jewish households, and they're reinventing Judaism.
I am
We got
example.
a new Judaism.
I'm
You're an
totally example one. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's wrong with that?
Because I tell you what,
It's working. Excellent. Good on you. Keep it up.
All right. My child attending a Jewish day school had nothing. It would have been no more likely had I married a Jewish woman.
There's plenty of people that I grew up with. They went to Hebrew school with me. They married Jewish women. They were totally out of the exact same environment as me. Totally left Judaism, turned their back on it, want no part of it, can't stand it.
But you can run, but you can't hide. They're still Jews.
You know, at the end of the day, what actually makes you a Jew? You know, for me, being Jewish is a matter of identity. You identify yourself.
As a very tortured individual, I would say, if Hitler would take you to the camps, then you're Jewish.
Okay. Very good.
And you could till you're blue in the... No, I don't even like these people. It wouldn't have mattered.
Right.
No,
right. You're taking like an external view,
right,
you know,
right.
defined externally. It's all about that other relationship
I do have a problem with
we've
that.
been talking about.
Let me ask you this. Would you have ever considered marrying out of the faith?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Did you date non-Jews?
Yeah, but I mean, don't forget, I met my wife when I was 16 in a Jewish youth group.
That's right.
So,
and you've never been to a laundromat.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just at one.
Well, we had one in our building. We used to live.
That
in
doesn't count. Doesn't count.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I always believe you gotta marry for love. I mean,
totally.
Being Jewish is important and all that, but you know.
But it was. Do you think it would have been all right with your mother? Well, she had already married outside of the faith.
Yeah, she was out, but look, she married inside the faith twice and outside only
so she's
once.
got a 67% in the faith.
And the marriage, when she married outside the faith, that one only lasted like 4 years, and her other marriages combined, you know, at least 5 times that.
Right.
Not to mention the boyfriend she's got now. Tack him on; he's Jewish. Although she had to kind of really turn him into a Jew. He was one of those guys. Oh yeah, I'm Jewish. Sure. How do you know you're a Jewish? You know, I was born Jewish 70 years ago or something like that. What have you done since? Yeah, not a whole lot of anything.
That's a really interesting. You know, that's a really interesting line of question, and I wish I had index cards because I would quickly write that down because that's something that deserves its own podcast. What have you done to be a Jew versus just you can run but you can't hide, which is always my that's always my take on it. You can run but you can't hide because of my ambivalent relationship with it. As far as intermarrying, it was never an issue in our family, which. I think that might have been, my parents were kind of into this whole, you know, they were trying to distance themselves from Great Neck. So you don't have to be a doctor, you don't have to be a lawyer, and you can marry whoever you want, except an idiot. That's what my dad would famously say. A mixed marriage is if you married an idiot. Right. Which I didn't do either. Yeah. There was a lot of girls I didn't bring home, Mom, so be happy. Really? It was no mistake I didn't bring them home. A few. They didn't make it home. But that is an interesting segue to what I want to talk about today. Although first I want to tell you why I was late. I was late because, oh,
You're what, 6 minutes late?
I thought I was going to be a
That's
lot
not
later.
really late.
Let's get this out of the way right now. I'm big and Eric's on fire. And the reason why I'm big is because I go to the gym all the time. But today I just couldn't get myself to the gym. So instead I took a walk. And oh, what a walk it was. Let me tell you. I walked from basically Fisherman's Wharf, which is where my gym is.
Wow.
Yeah.
You go all the way down there?
Well, Allie's school
Oh, yeah.
is over there.
Uh-huh.
How do you feel about Fisherman's Wharf?
Fisherman's Wharf's good for the Jews.
I like going there sometimes.
Yeah,
I like seeing people on
it's fun.
vacation. Sure,
You
it's
know,
a little
yeah.
honky tonk. Sometimes I feel bad, like, ah.
You know, the Fisherman's Wharf's good for the Jews because you can get a, steamed piece of whitefish or a good piece of salmon. But they're pushing a lot of crab down there.
Do you ever feel like you see, like, German tourists down there and you want to take them by the hand and go, let me show you San Francisco, because this isn't.
No, I feel like all tourists stay here, drop off all your money, and then go home. That's
I
sort
want
of
them
my
to have a good
perspective.
time. I really want them
to have a good time
to
at
have a
Fisherman's
really
Wharf.
good time. And I like going to Fisherman's Wharf because I like realizing there's people who save up all year to come to this place. It drives me freaking crazy most of the time.
That's right. Let them go to Fisherman's Wharf. Let them go to Chinatown. Let them go to Alcatraz. Let them go to all these places. Let them drop off all their money and let them stay clear from my neighborhood hunts. I'm a local. I'm polite to tourists.
I have a
I'm nice.
responsibility.
I show them a good time. Hey, I'm responsible too.
If they ask
but I
for
don't wanna be
directions, you
tripping
give them
over
directions, right?
Yeah. You want
nothing
directions?
could
Go
have made me-
screw yourself. Kiss my ass.
Nothing could have made me happier
You want
the other day.
directions?
I was in Pacific Heights, walking around, and I ran across these two identical twin German tourists. These kids, they were probably like early 20s, and they wanted to know.
Like the boys from Brazil. You're
No,
talking to them.
No,
What are you talking to them for?
Come on.
Okay.
Maybe descendants of the boys from Brazil, but
Yeah.
they wanted to know how to find the Full House house. Do you remember that TV
Full-
show?
oh, yeah,
Where's the
right.
Full House
The-
house? And
yeah.
I was so happy. They were up like on Divisadero, completely off kilter. I was so happy to show them. But, so my walk took me to the Golden Gate Bridge.
Wow, that's a schlep. Good
9
for you.
miles, 3 hours.
You have a glow,
I feel a little glowy.
You've got a glow about
And then
you.
I would feel like the man, except that I know that a fellow parent from Brandeis who's in his 70s walks 10 miles a day.
Yeah, so on hills,
and
does
I'm
walk hills.
I'm in pain. Let me tell you something. These workouts are taking their toll. I need a new workout
Really?
because
You need like a low.
No,
impact
I just assume I'm doing everything wrong. So after my birthday, which is in a month, I'm gonna get with a trainer and I'm gonna figure out how to do this right because my right Achilles tendon is killing me all the time. It's painful. Are you in pain when you get out of bed?
No.
I'm in pain every day when I get out of bed.
Really, pain is not good for the Jews.
Because I don't know what I'm doing. Well, I figure pain is my lot. You
don't know how to walk? You're like 47 years old? You've
no.
been walking your whole freaking life?
No, I think it's the weightlifting and the cardio that I'm doing wrong. Walking, I'm doing fine. But by the time I walk 9 miles, I'm in pain.
What are you talking?
I got to do it. Because I'll tell you what is for Jews? Heart disease.
Yes.
And that's what I'm trying to stave off because I have had super high cholesterol in the past, in my 20s.
Your problem is you actually have a heart. I am not prone to such diseases.
Okay.
Having no heart of stone.
Okay, Tin Man.
Well, I'm liable to heart rust. But beyond that,
do you check out that stuff? Well, I mean, you weigh like 4 pounds, so you probably have no problems.
I put on a bunch of weight. I tipped scale almost 160 yesterday. I'm the ideal weight for a man of my height.
Why does it make me think of Joe Piscopo as Frank Sinatra saying, "I have bowel movements that size"?
Wow.
All right.
I don't know how to speak to that. Having a bowel movement is
that's 160
good,
pounds. Then
good for
you
the
probably
Jews.
feel pretty good afterwards.
At your age, if you're actually having a bowel movement,
man
many of our
hasn't had a bowel
listeners are
movement
going
in
to be
3
impressed
weeks.
by this. Like that, Larry. He was on his podcast. He was bragging. He's walking. He's
160
lifting weights.
pounds.
He's moving his bowels. He's rubbing our nose in it like he's something special.
At some point, we will have to have a podcast.
I know a man
solely
70 years old.
to Jewish hypochondria. Right.
Okay.
Because I got plenty of that. All right, but here's what I want to talk about
So
today.
that's why you were late, because
I took this massive walk, and I just wanted to share with you how great that walk is. I know that I complain constantly about where I live.
Were you wearing these flats when you walked?
No, I was in workout stuff. I got to the gym, parked, went, no, and then just took a left and just walked through Crissy Field. It was nice.
Oh, it's beautiful down there.
Yeah, even though it was nice
Cold
and
and
cool.
foggy,
Oh,
though,
see, it was
this
nice
time
and
of
cool,
morning.
and I was walking pretty good clip.
Right, so you're all warm.
Yeah, so, and listening to podcasts.
Right, did you have your little armband on with your little iPod and your armband?
No, I had it in my
Armbands are not
pocket.
good for the Jews.
They're not good for anyone.
If you're wearing an armband, man,
well, yeah.
that'll get you kicked out of Temple Emmanuel.
Wearing an armband, even if it's got your iPod in
Well,
there?
you're marching around sweating with an armband
Well,
on?
I wouldn't call it marching so much as
That's
goose
fascist.
stepping. It was more like goose stepping.
Forget that, you know? if you're doing a little jog.
I do a nice arm swing, too, where one comes out straight ahead. Is that probably not good for the Jews?
It's not good for anyone.
Well, it's, it gets you extra calories.
Extra momentum.
Yeah.
Right. It gives you the shoulder injury to go with the
Well, I've already
ankle
got
pain.
a shoulder injury from way back. That's an old overuse baseball injury, but
I'd be like in one of those three-wheeled carts driving around with like a little orange triangle flag on it.
I can't.
That'd
Do you
be my
have any
workout.
idea what I would weigh if I didn't do that? I would weigh 400 pounds.
Really?
I
You
would
mean you don't
be-
weigh 400 pounds now?
Well,
Well,
I have
geez.
very dense bones, but I don't weigh 400 pounds. No,
Look at your arm.
no, I weigh like 190.
Really?
Yeah,
You're a stud.
no. But okay, while I was walking, I was listening to a podcast. I was listening to This American Life, that NPR, which I'm not an NPR guy.
Was that Ira Glass?
Ira
It's
Glass.
good for the Jews.
I would not be confused for being an NPR guy, but I do listen. I started listening to podcasts of This American Life recently, and I really like it.
Yeah.
It's
I listen
great.
to NPR. Yeah, oh yeah, he's good.
Yeah, he's
He does
really
like
good.
a video thing too. He's got
Oh, does he?
a show
Yeah.
with video, yeah.
But what? So this one I was listening to was about tribalism, tribes. It was just called Tribes, and he began. His open was that a Jewish friend of his said he wanted him to join a group, a Jewish group. And this is so funny, not knowing Ira Glass's level of Judaism and assuming it was quite high
Ira Glass.
with that voice.
Yeah.
He was so uncomfortable. I'm barely Jewish.
Right. Yeah.
Why do I need to be part of something Jewish? And I thought that is really interesting because I've been thinking about since last week. I said, what do I want to talk about next week? I said, well, you know what? I want to talk about something that is always kind of stuck in my craw about where we live. And I've always thought of it as a negative, but I don't know if it's a negative. I don't know. It might be good for the Jews. Here's the deal.
Right. Tell listeners where we live just so they know.
Oh, San Francisco. I've been talking about it the whole time.
All right.
I said Golden Gate Bridge. I
They
said
might not
Fisherman's
get the
Wharf. They might
context.
not- Oh, you mean Fisherman's Wharf in Tulsa? Oh, I love Fisherman's Wharf
You know,
in
there's
Tulsa.
a bunch of
All those
boneheads out there.
fish.
They just don't know.
Well, don't talk about Sharon like that.
No, not Sharon. That girl's smart.
Yeah?
Don't make her mad.
I would know. You're the
just
one
say
who
nice
just said
things about
boneheads,
her.
and we've
You
got one
clearly
listener,
don't
and
know
you're
who
saying
you're
bad
dealing
things
with.
about our one listener.
Man.
That's offensive. So anyways, here's the deal.
Yeah.
Most large American cities, New York,
Yeah, big one.
Pittsburgh, Los Angeles, even
That's not
Los
a city.
Angeles.
You call that a city? Yeah, it's
These
good for the
cities
Jews.
have a
LA.
lot of Jews
Yeah.
who live in Jewish neighborhoods.
They
San
have Jewish
Francisco,
neighborhoods.
no Jewish neighborhood, and that's
San
always bothered
Francisco's
me.
a Goyish town.
Maybe, maybe not. I know plenty of Jews, but here's my question, overarching question. Jewish neighborhood, good for the Jews, or should we be scattered about like we are here?
Oh no, Jewish neighborhood's good for the Jews.
How so?
Oh, you got ground zero. You don't have to go to the synagogue or the JCC to commune. You go to Cantor's Deli, you know what I mean? You go to the deli, you go to your, whatever, your Mahjong club or your poker
But
club.
you can do those
or
things
you go to
anyway.
your
I mean, aren't
gym.
those kind of isn't a Jewish neighborhood the ultimate idea of a densely populated Jewish neighborhood, all Jews, is twofold. One, it's so you don't have to talk to anybody else, and two, so you can walk to temple on Saturday.
No, you know where to go if you got to get, your challah bread, or you want to get rye bread, or you need to get mandelbrot, or you know what I mean. You need to get some
But
sort
I
of
think
Jewish
we can all do
food.
that. We had that network through our children's school.
No, where are you going to go in San Francisco to get
That
good,
one place out
deli?
on one place out on Irving Street.
Yeah, one place. One place. If there's only one place, it gives them the power to be.
No, but wait,
bastards.
I'm not talking about.
Having one place isn't good for the Jews. Having 10 places is good for the Jews. That's what I'm saying. You go down to, L.A., the Jewish neighborhood there, and you see people walking around with yarmulkes, and they got payas, and they're in the street, and no one's throwing anything at them, and
Which
no
is
one's spraying
good.
swastikas on their doors. That is good for the Jews.
Well, you're talking about two things then. You say having 10 delis is good, but also being able to see Jews in the streets in one place. Like, when you go to LA, all right, I'm going to go over to Fairfax because I want to go to a deli and I want to see other Jews. I know if I go to Fairfax, just like I knew for 9 years, if I go to Brandeis Hillel Day School, I will see my tribe.
I'll tell you something. I was in Miami a while ago. Miami, Jewish town, right?
Is there a Jewish neighborhood in Miami, or is this the whole city?
I just think it's all. Well, I think it's like
I
the
was-
West Bank. You know, the Jews had taken it over. You know what I mean?
But no, they
they're
brought
all
money,
old.
though, so no one's trying to kick them out.
That's right.
No, I just
you
think
have
it's
to be
important.
over 80.
It's important when you talk about Florida, I always say to differentiate between Florida and Florida.
Right. This is Florida.
Florida, where
So here's what got me. I was in Florida.
you're in Florida.
We went to this sort of flea market. It was like a flea market trade show swap meet indoor place, and they had a food court in there. And this is what impressed me. Food court, they got, jerk chicken, right? Because it's by the Caribbean.
Right.
They got what you'd expect, a Cuban food, Cuban sandwiches and all that. And then they got not one, not two, but 3 kosher-style little concessions. And I'm sitting there at a table with my mom, and I'm looking over at like these 2 Bahamian women. I don't know, they're Jamaican or
and
something
they're
like
eating
that.
matzo ball soup.
And they're eating knishes and matzo ball soup. And I was thinking, that's good for the Jews.
Yeah,
Because that
exporting
says,
culture.
yes, we have a thriving, alive, identifiable culture, and there's a nexus of people in the cities who are keeping that culture alive and well, and it's affecting the other cultures around. We're having cultural exchange. We're standing together in the city, shoulder to shoulder as equal people. It's good for the Jews, equality.
But I think
it's good for the
that
Jews.
is possible without a core Jewish neighborhood. Now, I'm not talking about lack of Jews. I'm
Right, you're
talking
talking about
about
the ground
should Jews
zero.
be all living like, when I moved to San Francisco first, I wanted to live in North Beach because I thought, how
Yeah.
cool, an Italian neighborhood. It'll be so cool. Well, it's a Chinese neighborhood.
Right, there are
but-
no Italians up there.
But I just loved this idea of these neighborhoods you could go to that had these very strong, I guess they were ethnic identities, because there really aren't neighborhoods grouped by anything else other than the Pacific Heights is where rich people live. Although actually San Francisco is where rich people live.
Yeah, Pacific Heights is where the uber rich,
The uber
right.
ultra rich live. And I guess the Mission is still mostly Hispanic.
Well, it depends. Have you been down there lately?
Yeah,
The
it's-
impression is that's all Googlers on their Google bus, and they're
It
pushing
is,
us all out.
But I did
Now
walk.
rents are through the roof because we
Yeah.
got this engineers making $180,000 a year who
Shut the
bought
gate.
my apartment.
When I
you know?
went to, and I majored in English at Babson, so I can't get that same job. No, that's fine. Shut the gate behind me. But no, I did walk yesterday. I took my stupid little dog for a walk we took Bart. I don't even know if that's legal, but
Just took your dog on Bart?
yeah, I took him on Bart. He was super well behaved.
Did you
but
act like you were blind? I think if you're blind, you could do that.
No, I didn't even. I was gonna. What do they say? I was gonna ask for forgiveness rather than permission, which is so weird for me because I hate that generally.
Yeah,
but
but
actually, I have looked it up before, and I was feeling like I think it might be legal to take your dog on Bart. You can
When
take him
Bart
on Muni.
Police cites you for bringing a dog on there,
That's
you can ask
fine.
all the permission you want.
Right.
What are you talking about? Fine. Those guys shoot you dead for no reason. Haven't you heard?
Well, I'm white.
Well, that's true.
Um,
but you got one of those weird,
Vicious,
dogs with
weird-looking
miniature
dog.
legs.
Tiny
which,
leg.
you
Hey,
know,
buddy.
People see that they get.
No, actually, it is legal. I brought him on Muni before because it is legal to bring your dog on Muni, and if you bring a
Bart's
muzzle,
different district.
yeah, I know. So I brought a muzzle. Thinking, we're going one stop. I got a muzzle. If
Right.
something happens, anyways, we walked the 10 blocks, which if your legs are this long, it was quite a trek for.
Yeah.
Anyways, I noted once again, as I always do on Mission Street, I count the number of blocks I can go without hearing English, and it was like 5, just Spanish. So there's still. Maybe just because the hipsters were keeping their mouths shut as
You'll
they're
hear
walking, and they're all wearing
Spanish
headphones
anywhere
too.
in the,
But
this part in the Southwest California. I mean,
But I digress. My point was, I love ghettos, basically. Grouped.
yeah, because you
ethnic-
don't live in one.
Well, no, but ghetto. But
Said from the guy who lives in Noe Valley.
I
you
don't
know.
live in Noe Valley.
Well, what do you call your neighborhood?
Glen Park.
That ain't a ghetto.
No. Well, no, it's turning into one.
Ghettos are bad for the Jews.
That is my whole discussion here because the definition of ghetto, as I understand it, is a homogeneous community.
No, the ghetto was a homogeneous community of Jews with a wall around it.
Right.
and at certain time of night, there was a curfew, and all the Jews had to be
Right.
inside.
And then
they come and they lock the door and make sure you stayed in. So it's like basically a jail
Right.
neighborhood.
But the original definition is a homogeneous society. I mean, it wasn't, and then J.J. Walker made it.
You know something? Ghetto's an Italian word. I'm not going to let you define this on your own terms. I understand that you're the English language master. I shouldn't dispute with you, but I think you're making up a definition here.
No, I'm not. I think I'm using an archaic definition, and I have fealty to words. We got
I think
this
it's the
whole
wrong
discussion.
definition. Let me just.
We
be
got
clear.
in this
I don't
whole
think that's
discussion
it.
about how I think the word progressive was hijacked for political means.
Well, that was true.
Yeah.
You were
Anyways,
right that time. You were on the nose.
all right.
Okay, so ghetto. So you
anyways-
think, is a ghetto good for the Jews? I mean, what?
Is if the definition of ghetto is a place where people of the same ilk, the same kind of people, same ethnic background, all live together and create this community with their customs and their culture.
Like a cultural commune.
I guess.
Yeah.
I find myself drawn to those places.
Oh yeah,
But
those
is
are
that good
places.
for the Jews?
Sure, those are good for the Jews.
I
Like
would
if it's
say-
like Israel, where you go and you got Israeli artists and you got Israeli musicians and Israeli dance theater and the Israeli Jewish culture's alive and well in all its forms, and Jews of all different stripes from the East and the West living together and fusing their cultures and making this, tremendous society that's totally creative and vibrant. That's great for the Jews.
Okay, let me ask you this
If they're
then.
forced into like the Warsaw Ghetto,
okay,
where
we're
you got
talking about-
Nazis standing outside with guns, they lock them in, they put barbed wire on top, and that's where you starve to death.
Do
Bad
you
for
think?
the Jews.
Okay, then let's talk about first generation immigration, New York City ghetto, Lower East Side.
Lower East Side.
They were forced into that ghetto by poverty.
Yeah, but wasn't a ghetto because they had upward mobility and they moved on out. They weren't
After a
taken
while.
out. See, the ghetto, okay, what happened in the ghetto originally was you had people who were assimilated into society, Jews who had found a place in
Right, and they were
society.
put there.
And they were removed from and dispossessed and forced into a ghetto.
Well, so that was essentially a precursor to a concentration camp
right.
or an internment
Well,
camp.
I mean, the Warsaw Ghetto in World War
Right,
II, that's what
right.
they did. They had Jews living all over, especially in the Netherlands and in Germany. Jews in very high places. I mean, in those countries, don't forget, in France, they had a prime minister of France who was Jewish.
France
at
of
one
all
point.
places.
Yeah, right? And then, and so, I mean, that's how high the Jews had risen in Europe. And then the backlash was the Nazis put them in the ghettos, and the ghetto
Yeah.
was a holding
Well, do you
tank
think-
before going to the
Do you
concentration
think that has
camp.
anything to do with why we don't have Jewish neighborhoods?
No.
No.
No, because we're talking about two different things.
But
You're
honestly, because
talking
I think the thing is, what I notice that's interesting is a lot of, well, not a lot, some other ethnicities, if there's that neighborhood and people leave the neighborhood, it's considered treason. How could you leave? You should, if you made too much money, you left. Why don't you keep your money here? Whereas
Right.
I've never found that compunction among Jews.
No,
we're
that's not
fine
a-
with getting away from each
right,
other.
right, yeah, that's not
We're
a
cool with
Jewish
that.
thing.
Although I don't know LA. I mean, Fairfax is an affluent place, isn't it?
Everything down there is affluent. I mean, Fairfax, some of the
No way,
houses around
man.
there.
East
they got
LA,
these-
nasty. South Central LA, nasty.
Is that really LA?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's really poor places in LA.
Right, because I'm definitely thinking of the Jewish LA.
Right,
know?
yeah. The brown LA is not like the Jewish LA.
Yeah, well,
Or the West Side LA.
what do I know from that? I've seen it on TV. I've definitely. And actually, I did once have a friend who came from. He told me he came from a very tough part of LA.
Yeah.
And he's a black guy, and I've heard firsthand from him. Excuse me, that this is not the place you'd want to go, and definitely his ambition was to get
get
away
out.
from that because it was like a nowhere place to live. There's
Right.
no opportunities.
Hopelessness.
There's no financial opportunity. There's just nothing there. If you want to make money or have money,
You got to get out.
you got to get out. So I mean, if you're living in that type of environment, it can't be good for anyone. Certainly wouldn't be good for the Jews.
But what
But-
about this idea? You know how where we live, a frequent refrain you'll hear from people why they don't want to live in a certain place is because it's too white. Why do you want to? I want to live in Marin. There's all those white people out there.
Really, I've never heard that.
Oh my God, I hear it all the time.
From who? From Jews?
Interesting. I don't know if it's from Jews. Well, I don't know any Jews who would want to live in Marin.
I don't know if I could even relate to that unless you are excluding Chinese as being white. I mean, it begs the question: are Chinese people white? If you're saying, yeah, Chinese are white, then I can't even conceive of living in a place that's too white because, like, we live among so many Chinese people,
Well,
without any problem or issue at all, in utter bliss.
They're
I
a
should point
separate.
out.
They're an interestingly separate thing. Like, where's the Chinese neighborhood in San Francisco?
Everywhere.
It's San Francisco, right?
Right.
And
Yeah,
actually, outside of San Francisco, even more so. Foster City.
Right, but ground zero is Clement Street. Clement Street's the new, modern, working, functional Chinatown.
Right, and therefore so much more fun to go to than the other Chinatown.
The other Chinatowns for tourists. I mean, it's just a nightmare.
Right.
But, Clement Street is like a practical working place. I was there the other day, man. I went in, got some dim sum. Then went to the green grocer, got these big bags of pea
Go to one of those
shoots.
crazy stores that sells everything.
No. I was just getting food.
I like those places.
I was just getting food. But it was like old fashioned, like old old city shopping.
Like a functioning city
functioning
neighborhood.
fish market, a functioning butcher shop.
Because the cable cars, not even the fake cable cars, go that far out.
Right. It's got a nice wide street. It's flat. There's parking.
You can actually walk down the street.
Yeah, you can walk down the street.
That's the worst. Walking down Stockton Street, where all those markets are at the end, is the worst.
Oh, but that's so cool to see.
It's so cool to see the crazy fruit that you have no idea what it is, but just to get from one block is horrific.
Right.
I think either Daly City or Foster City were the first cities in America with an Asian majority.
Really?
One or the other, yeah. It might. I'm thinking it's Daly City.
Well, I enjoy living amongst Asian people. And if when people say, Marin's too white, I don't want to go there, if what they mean is there's not enough Asian people, I could see that would be a total problem. Cause
that's not what they're talking about.
Really? They when they talk about white, they mean as opposed to black folks and Mexican folks.
Right.
Latin,
right,
Latino.
because that's
brown,
diversity.
South American.
Asians don't count in the diversity factor. Don't you understand that?
Well, that's what I was questioning.
Yeah, that's what they're talking about.
I don't know. It's like, as far as I'm concerned, that's just a bunch of talk. Because, for me personally, I don't really think about it. I don't know. When I'm thinking about it now, I guess on my street I know there's one black family. I don't know if there's any Latino folks, and I don't really care.
Do you know your neighbors?
No, I don't know them.
Oh.
And I don't care. It's like, who's counting? I'm not walking up the street looking at, what color face have you got and
I know
doing a demographic and whether it matters to my personal experience. You know what I mean?
Well, then you are living behind the times, my friend.
Really? I just want
you got to pay attention to that stuff, man.
Okay, well, I'll tell you something. Here's how I view the world. You don't have white folks and black folks. I realize that exists. I'm not denying it. But for me personally, there are Jews and there are Gentiles.
Ha!
Black folks, you got Jewish black folks and you got Gentile black folks,
Mostly Gentile.
Latinos, yeah. you got there's some Jews.
Except for there was that one guy. Do you remember him? He started in our class. He was this guy. He was Hispanic.
Carlos. Yeah. Carlos.
Yeah, and he found out. Remember, and then he went all in.
Yeah, he's back in Great Neck.
Is he really?
He
went back to the homeland.
Look, that guy had some serious knocks that made him really consider how he wanted to live his life and raise his kids. But he was a decent cat.
Yeah, he was going to be in our class, and then I think they decided to wait a year because then I just sort of saw him around.
One of his girls was in Emma's class.
Oh, okay.
Segunda, my second, and she's in touch with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When did they leave?
Periodically. Oh, it was years ago.
Huh. 6
years, maybe.
Let me, because we're way far afield now, but let me ask you this, because maybe you would know this better than me. Was there ever a dedicated Jewish neighborhood in San Francisco?
Yes. Webster Street.
Okay, so I thought, in the Fillmore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and sure, because look at what's out there. That's where you got Sherith Israel and Emmanuel and the vicinity.
Oh, yeah.
Temple Emmanuel is the oldest synagogue in California.
Right.
It was the first one. Now,
and we do know a lot of people that live near it.
We know people who live around it.
But I wouldn't call that a Jewish neighborhood.
Right. I think Geary Street for a while was Jewish. I think that's where most of the Russian Jews went to. The Richmond is Jewish. If you had to say San Francisco, what's the Jewish part? The Richmond.
I would consider it more Russian than Jewish. And I don't know how many of those Russians are Jewish.
You make a point. But they used to have a kosher deli out there in the House of Bagels and things like that.
House Bagels is still there.
There was some, but
some stuff. But it's not like when I think of
it's not like Pico and Fairfax,
right? And it's not like North Beach where I can choose from 25 Italian restaurants.
And it's certainly not like New York and Brooklyn and Crown Heights and.
I don't even know what that would be like. I'd like to see that, but I can't even imagine what it would be like.
Inconceivable to
I
us.
might not like it because it's so foreign to me.
Well, here's what I noticed. People that come from that environment, friends of ours from the school, they're raised in back east and they come from that. Their sense, they don't share your sense of Jewishness, that whole otherness thing.
Right.
They don't, that's not an issue because they come from a place where a third of the school was Jewish, school closed on Yom Kippur. They weren't raised with the challenges that we were raised with. Challenge that we dealt with, being a Jew in a Goyish town, here's what you deal with. Every year on Yom Kippur, some wise-ass school teacher is going to assign an exam and force you to go all the way to the principal with notes from the rabbi and make a big stink just so you could take the test on another day. Instead of just being a mensch and saying, no, okay, I recognize today's Yom Kippur, I'm going to give the test on another day. It's because they got to stick it to you. Now, if you went to school in Great Neck, you just didn't face that. You know, you didn't.
So
have
is
that
this
problem.
part of your reality? So in that sense, then you're sort of obtusely making the argument that Jewish neighborhoods are good for the Jews.
I wouldn't
because
say
you could get to
obtusely.
remove directly. You're saying that?
Obtuse makes it sound rather pejorative, don't you think?
Okay, I didn't mean that. I meant in an indirect way.
Ah,
You're saying that.
maybe you should have said oblique.
Oh, nice. Obliquely, you're saying that a Jewish neighborhood removes the otherness. Now,
I think any concentration of Jews where the Jews are together exercising free will and not forced together is good for the Jews.
okay, so do you need that neighborhood then? Because we got that out of our school.
Well,
Although there was so much infighting going on there, it was hard to think of
So
that as,
you can't
as people being like-minded.
two different things.
Is it
two different
possible
things.
in San Francisco?
We got our community out of the school. The school served the community need for us. The requirement to have a place to go where you can commune and know where you're going to find your peeps. The school served that purpose. But there's a big difference between organizational life, belonging to an organization, versus just living in a place.
Just waking
where
up in the morning
incidentally-
and you get up and there's Jews.
Exactly, everyone's like you. Because when you're in an organization, like you're saying, there's relationships.
Right.
And when you live in a Jewish environment, you don't have to have the relationship.
And that's a really good point, because not only are there relationships, there's agendas too.
Of course.
I mean,
It's
the
an
old
organization. It must be
right.
managed.
I mean, the old joke: two Jews in a room with three opinions.
Yeah, in fact, that's not really true, because it's really one Jew, two opinions, and from that you extrapolate two Jews, three, maybe four opinions.
There were certainly more opinions than there were Jews at that school.
That's right.
And people were very bought into those opinions. And it made me wonder at times, geez, what would it be like if I woke up in the morning and every day I was surrounded by these people?
Well, it would be different.
You're saying it'd be different, yeah.
Right, because you'd have options. You'd say, you know what, I don't like this Jewish school with all the hippie freak weirdos. I'm going to go to the other Jewish school.
Well, there is another Jewish
I'll
school.
go to the public school where they're still all Jews. You know, that's the advantage. I don't like this synagogue. I'll go to that synagogue.
I was shocked. I was listening to a podcast, because I listen to a lot of podcasts, and Lena Dunham was on.
Don't know who that is.
Oh, you don't? She's... Wow.
But,
she does this TV show called Girls, and she's like 25, and she's very talented, very known for being very young and talented, right?
Okay.
New York. And she grew up in the art world. Her parents were artists, and I think maybe her mother's Jewish. I don't know, but she's not raised Jewish. But she was talking about how in 7th grade she went to 35 bar mitzvahs.
Right.
And when our kids went, I mean, I wrote a whole book about how weird it was that our kid went to 35 bar mitzvahs
the
in
year
7th
of
grade.
endless bar mitzvahs.
Right. Not thinking that, like there's a world where, I mean, when I went to we probably went, my wife and I probably went to a dozen that year. And when I went to that 12th bar mitzvah, that was maybe the 14th I'd gone to in my life. I went to mine, and I went to Richard Kolodny's, and that was, and my cousin Lonnie's. That's... Yeah, so
you had 3, and then all of a sudden
it was so
more.
odd. But there are places where you don't have to be part of this specialized world in order for that to happen to you, which would be bizarre.
Right.
But I think I'm talking about something different here. I'm talking about just proximity, and
this is an interesting point. My wife asks this question all the time. I mean, one of for her, okay. See, my wife is a. You couldn't identify her as a Jew by looking, because she's got blonde hair.
She reminds us of that all the time.
She's tall and thin. She doesn't have big tuchus, doesn't have big boobs. She doesn't have brown curly hair. She's not your prototypical. When people think of what a Jew's supposed to look like, they think Julia Louis-Dreyfus. They don't think
she's
Jen
not even
Dash.
Jewish.
Right? She's not. Get out of here.
I don't think she is. You can look it up.
Julie Dreyfus. She's not Jewish.
Yeah, maybe.
Come on.
I know she's from a very wealthy family.
But that's a nail in the coffin. Of course she's Jewish.
You might be right.
So
right.
Julia Louis-Dreyfus is good for the Jews, by the way.
Have you seen her show?
Don't need to. I've seen her.
It's so funny.
Really? Well, she's hysterical.
Oh my gosh, it's hilarious.
She made a Woody Allen movie.
Natalie
She's totally
Portman,
Jewish.
very good for the Jews.
Oh, excellent for the
She's
Jews.
great for the Jews. But also someone
Mila Kunis. Woo!
Yeah.
Good for the Jews.
Identifiably
good for everyone.
Jewish. Yeah. Anyways, what you were saying.
So my point is, my wife, she's frequently mistaken for a shiksa, that is a non-Jewish woman with blonde hair, and she resents that because she's totally identified Jewish, raised Jewish, the whole thing, 100% through and through. And one thing that always bothers her is that she didn't grow up in like a New York environment where there is this concentration of Jews, where being Jewish would be normal.
But you guys live in a world where being Jewish is normal.
But she grew up in the burbs where there were no Jews, and she couldn't even be identified as a Jew, and so she felt completely like alienated.
Which is
from her
funny,
people.
because I grew up that way, and I was happy to not be identified as a Jew, even though I was always identified as a Jew.
Really? Why would anyone know you're a Jew? Rosen?
Oh, hair. I had crazy Jew hair.
That's
a Jew
right.
fro at the time.
Yeah, the hair.
Now I miss it. At the time, I complained bitterly about it.
But now you got the prototypical Jewish ring, you know.
I would take, well, because you can fit a yarmulke right over it.
That's why yarmulkes
I
were
thought
invented.
briefly about becoming more religious.
You will understand why a yarmulke exists when you go to Israel and you're walking around. It's 108 degrees and the sun's shining right on the back of your head. And you're like, I'm gonna get
I'll tell you
burn
what.
right
I
here.
take that very seriously.
A little yarmulke on there.
My father's head is bright red.
Really?
And I take it very seriously.
Skull cap.
Baseball cap generally as a sort of jockey guy, and also lots of sunscreen.
Yeah. That's
Gotta do the sunscreen if you're gonna do this thing. Otherwise, a comb over, which by the way is a patented process.
Comb over, really?
Yes, it is.
I did not know.
It shouldn't be, but it is.
You're a font of interesting tidbits, my friend.
Thank you. It's useless information. I'm a genius of useless stuff. But you guys live in a Jewish world without having a Jewish neighborhood. If you had a party tomorrow, what percentage of the guests would be Jewish?
All of them.
100%, except for my wife.
Well, she's an honorary.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
Jews and spouses of Jews.
She's a semi-Semite or an adjacent Jew.
No, I mean, you know, we got a couple of non-Jewish friends, and there have been periods in my life where I did not associate exclusively with Jews. It just so happens now, because we sought to raise our kids in the school and have the Jewish community, that the majority of our social relationships, you know, they're through the school. But honestly, now that my kids are grown and getting out of school, I'm moving much more into kind of the secular world, if you will, or a non-Jewish community of friends.
It kind of had to happen, because we had, as if we lived in a Jewish neighborhood, we had ready-made Jewish friends.
Right.
We had some very large central component of our lives in common.
See, here's the thing, though. It's like in San Francisco, okay, if you lived in New York, and if you had a job, you know, you got my job, so you're a computer programmer. It didn't matter where you went to work. There's going to be 8, 10, 12% of the people are Jews. Because that's a concentration of the Jews in the environment.
And let me ask you this, because I didn't grow up this way. I grew up no Jews, and then 9 years of all Jews, and now back to pretty much...
Which is better?
No.
Yes, good answer.
No, that's not what I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask if you live in a world where 20% of everyone you run across is Jewish, is it eventually no big deal?
It's no big deal.
Because that would be cool. But on the other hand...
no big deal is good for the Jews.
Well, but on the other hand, I kind of like the moment when you see the other guy's Jewish and go, oh, me and you, buddy.
That's what you call
this.
a galoot attitude. It's a vestige of living in the diaspora. It's that whole sense of otherness, and you got to reach out and find someone like you.
In my DNA. It's why, it's
not good for the Jews.
It's why we're always like, hey, Tim Sage Rosenfels, who was a quarterback, Jewish.
Right, exactly.
Really? Jay Fiedler, Jewish.
Right.
Son of a gun.
Let's
root for him.
I understand it. I don't think it's good for the Jews, but I understand it.
Yeah, I don't know if... I guess it isn't. I mean, that's all I know, so I guess it isn't. We used to joke, my Aunt Lillian was from Bangor, Maine, and she'd always point out the people that were from Bangor. And this is when I was a little kid, before we moved to California and lived in the Jewless world. Mm-hmm. And it didn't occur to me that what she was doing is what Jews do.
Right, now you know.
You know.
Right.
Scarlett Johansson's Jewish.
Oh, yeah, half Jewish.
Yeah, she's one of us.
Right. Yeah, I would argue that being at the point where being Jewish is so commonplace and the survival of the people is not questioned and not being challenged, and you're around Jews and so many Jews exist that you're just completely ambivalent about who's a Jew and the fact that you live amongst them, that is the ideal of being good for the Jew.
And do you think that's happening in cities like New York and LA?
Because
I kind of feel like there's still a glass ceiling.
I think it's happening in Israel, but I think, of course, Israel faces an existential threat.
And real threats.
Yeah. Existential meaning they may not exist,
right,
which is bad for the Jews. I think in a place like New York, it is good in the effect that it has on us culturally and as human beings. But I would also say there is a hidden unspoken threat to American Jewry that no one wants to talk about. It's just as real as the threat that European Jews faced 70 years ago. It just hasn't bubbled to the surface. You
talking about the never again threat?
Yeah.
Yeah, well...
I mean, look at the conditions, I mean...
I'm
worried. Just saying we shouldn't be too complacent.
Right. Okay? I get worried when I read stories about Europe.
I'm not worried about Europe. I'm worried about America.
Because we don't talk about it?
No, because the majority of American Jews are so complacent in the fact that we're established, we have political power, economic power, we're firmly established, and we live in a pro-Semitic environment, not anti-Semitic, pro-Semitic. America loves its Jews, but that could change. That's how it was in Germany, and it's how it was in France.
America loves its Jews. How much of that threat is coming from within? No, sometimes I think we're not good for the Jews. Not you and I, but us Jews, we're not good for the Jews. I think we know a lot of Jews who aren't good for the Jews.
There's the self-hating Jew out there who's against his people, the Neturei Karta, that are protesting against Israel. And there's, all the Jews who are like, signing up with any movement to whatever, ban circumcision or ban kosher meat, or they're against Israel, or they think all religion's stupid. And they just
do you think that's innately? Do you think that's innately Jewish? Do you think anyone else does that? I'm asking you because I don't know the answer to this.
It's a real good. I think it is. I think it's very common among the Jews. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know why? Because the Jews.
But is there something in what we're taught that leads us to that?
Yeah, it's this hyper intellectualism where you're supposed to examine things, and there are people who are building up a social philosophy or political theory that is completely divorced from the reality of their own existence. And then they're pursuing their ideal.
You talked about this a little bit last week.
Thinking about how it is to actually live in the real world. And they have an ideal of some kind of utopia, and they don't recognize that their utopian ideal requires that their people don't exist.
Excludes them.
Right? It excludes you. And I'm like, I'm not signing up for that. It's like,
no,
and first of all, show me a place on earth where that utopian ideal exists, where all people have decided to throw off their culture and their identity and their religion, their language and their race, and live happily as humans. We have a humanist society where everyone gets along. That doesn't exist.
There are humanist Jews in San Francisco. I looked into it. Relative to what we're talking about, in our city, where there is no Jewish physical core neighborhood that we all live in, and that sort of thinking seems pretty prevalent, at least my experience. My experience has been that it's pretty easy to run into one of those Jews.
Right. Which we need to put a label on these people. So I'm going to call them hippie, commie, liberal Jews. Hippie, not to distinguish your typical commie liberal Jews,
right?
Like the good guys from New York who gave you the ACLU,
right?
Versus their children and grandchildren who are completely, misdirected.
So commie liberal Jews were the free speech Berkeley Jews.
Well, you're already borderlining on the hippie thing.
Well, they became hippies later
free speech movement, good for the Jews.
Because there were drugs,
right?
And it was really fun.
I'm talking about people who have an ideal, a utopian ideal that doesn't at all comport with reality and is unachievable, yet they're absolutely committed to that ideal, even at the expense of their own identity and their own existence.
My point being, though, do you think that's more feasible in a place like this? Is it is the fact that we don't have Jewish neighborhoods in San Francisco partially responsible for that happening, or is it just because that's how people who are going to end up that way come here?
No, I don't understand that question.
Do you think there'd be fewer?
What the hell are you talking about?
Do you think there'd be fewer of the people you just described if we had Jewish neighborhoods to all live in?
Oh, yes, I do.
How come?
Because I think.
Is it a little bit? It's a little bit because of the familiarity. Because they would see their everyday reality would be Jews.
Yeah, I think because if there were Jewish neighborhoods, then the Jews would be reflecting off of the other Jews much more, and the sort of the social mindset would be much more influenced by a Jewish way of thinking versus when you're here in San Francisco, Berkeley environment, which is ground zero for the hippie movement and new ways of thinking.
Yeah.
I think the thought process, it just comes with the environment.
Well, plus people came here to be part of that.
Yeah, people are coming here to be part of that. And
you're saying then that because what we experienced was an institution and not an organic way of living, that made it more possible for them to continue this line of thinking and not
I suppose. I'm going to have to assume you summed that up correctly, but because I'm
not sure I did.
Yeah, I'm not sure I even understand what you mean.
Because I guess the problem is I'm still having trouble drawing a distinction between living in a neighborhood full of Jews and belonging to something full of Jews, i.e. a school or a synagogue.
Right. Well, belonging means you're making a choice to join and you're somehow subscribing to
But you made a choice to live in that neighborhood with other Jews.
Yeah, but there's no sort of entry requirement. You don't have to subscribe to any particular belief system or commit to any particular, behavior or agree to have relationships with people. You just move in and live there.
Are those Jewish neighborhoods or are they Eastern European neighborhoods?
Well, by now they're all Jewish.
Yeah.
I mean, it's people. Anyone who came from Eastern Europe would be like the recent emigres from the Soviet Union came over only like 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not they're living in Crown Heights and Great Neck, places like that, I don't know. But I know you've got Jewish neighborhoods that have been there for 90, 100 years.
But were they created by Eastern European immigrants 90 or 100 years ago is my point.
I think there's been some migration of people over time, but I think those...
So now they're Jewish neighborhoods full of Jews from all sorts of backgrounds.
No, I don't think you find a lot of Sephardic Jews out there.
That's true.
I think I think that in my experience, like the North African Jews, the Sephardic Jews, the Eastern Jews...
Where are they?
They live in their own little communities.
I only know one.
One community or one person?
No, one Sephardic Jew.
Really?
Yeah. Did we have a lot at the school? I only remember one.
Oh, a couple. Well, I mean, I grew up with plenty. I had good families who, of course, my mom married an Egyptian Jew. And his whole family, they were in our synagogue. There was another Egyptian Jewish family in my youth group. So that's two just in my congregation.
I
remember when the Iranians came over in 1980.
78.
Yeah. And their culture was so different.
See, we didn't get any of them.
We have, we
only got Muslim
got a Moroccan
Iranians.
family in our community.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. That's the only one I know.
So, I mean, here's what's interesting. That's why you need Jewish community, Jewish organizations, because at least here, you are getting the Egyptian and the Moroccan and the Jews from all different backgrounds to mix.
So you want to weave them together.
Right. In my synagogue, it was the same thing. In my synagogue, when I was growing up, my mom's circle of friends from her synagogue, you had people from Russia, Israel, Colombia, Egypt. Yeah, Colombia. Egypt. Where else? Of course, places in Europe. But the point is, all these people who you would think were different cultures and should be mixing with their own particular cultures, they weren't. They were all mixing together as Jews, despite the fact that they all came from different cultures,
so spoke
different languages. They all spoke different languages. Some of them spoke French, some Arabic, some Spanish. Some Russian, didn't matter. They all came together.
Okay, but now we're
Jews.
talking about an institution again. We're not talking about a neighborhood.
Right, that's what I'm saying. When you join an institution, you're going there because you want to belong. So you're reaching out to your people directly. And if you just are living in an environment that happens to be predominantly Jewish, I think your experience is much, much different. And you can be ambivalent, and you don't necessarily have to have relationships with others. And you don't have to buy into their way of thinking to get along.
Right, and that's actually the next thing I was going to bring up, and the question of whether or not a Jewish neighborhood is good for the Jews, is the idea that you can now exclude everyone else and just stay in your neighborhood.
Well, I don't see how you can exclude everyone else.
I never leave my neighborhood when I don't have to.
Yeah, but you don't own your neighborhood. You can't prevent,
No, but if you live in a Jewish neighborhood... I mean, I've never experienced this, obviously, growing up where I grew up, but I've read stuff written by people who grew up in Jewish neighborhoods where Catholics were extremely exotic to them. They just never ran across non-Jews.
You know what happens to a Jewish neighborhood when the Jews move out?
Black people move in?
It becomes a black neighborhood.
Yes.
I grew up in the burbs here in the Bay Area. I grew up in Pacifica. 1960s, I grew up in Pacifica. Our next door neighbors, what were they called? The Schroeders? Or on the end of the street, Schroeders moved out. Black family moved in.
Here?
It was in Pacifica.
Where'd
in the
they
60s.
find them? Wasn't Asians
in the 60s,
or Mexicans?
No, think about what's going on in the 60s.
They hadn't, yeah, okay.
Right? You had a great, surge forward by black people in the end of segregation and, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, black people entering the middle class for the first time. So these black families moved into our suburban neighborhood, moved right next door to us.
Did that create those, like, creepily creepily bigoted little old Jewish ladies?
Absolutely not.
Really?
You know what happened in our neighborhood? We had a polyglot neighborhood. Everyone lived together, got along. My neighbor 2 doors down was from Kentucky.
Whoa.
He was, you know, and my neighbor on the other side is from Mississippi.
They
And these
eventually
were
kicked them out of the Bay Area?
No.
They
You
didn't
know
have to
what?
get there to leave.
Black family moved right next door to the guy from Mississippi. He was like, I ain't gonna live next door to any. You know what happened? A couple of days later,
Buddies.
they're looking under the hood of the car. The little black kid from next door. Hey, what you got going on under the hood of the car? Yeah, all right, I'll show you how to work a socket wrench. You know, it's like we all got along.
But then eventually, everybody left, and Asian people bought those houses.
No, this is Pacifica. They're Filipinos.
Oh, that's Asian.
That's Asian?
Yes.
Well, see, in Daly City and Pacifica, Filipinos are not Asian, right? They're totally. It's not Asia. It's what is it? It's some other.
They're considered Asian.
Melanesia.
When I said Daly City has a majority of Asians, I included Filipinos.
I don't think of Filipinos.
Because you can
as
get
Asian.
the best Filipino food in Daly City.
Yeah. Filipinos, by the way, I grew up with a lot of Filipinos. I never thought of them as Asian. And I must say, Filipino people, you can't judge them all, right? But some of the most affable and likable, lighthearted, fun, just easygoing people I've ever encountered. Absolutely delightful.
And so I wonder if they would consider Pacifica and Daly City Filipino neighborhoods now. Like when I drive
for
down,
the Samoan parts, yes.
if you drive down El Camino Real, Mission Street, into Daly City, there's Filipino restaurants, bookstores, lining the streets. So I guess that is a Filipino neighborhood. There's still no place I can go where there's delis. And
Not
what else
here.
would there be?
Hey, it's a Goyish town. That's what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Filipinos are
Pretty Catholic
Goyan,
town.
you know.
It is. I don't even know where.
You know where the Filipinos used to live back in the 40s? The Filipino neighborhood was where Moscone Center is now.
Really?
That was ground zero for the Filipinos.
And Japanese.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Japanese is before that.
And those were the most patriotic Filipinos on earth. I swear to God, man. Those guys were the army, you know?
Well, yeah, those guys, I saw,
Even to this day, they're like...
Tons of flags in their windows after 9/11.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah. What I observed when I was in high school is Filipino kids generally know the martial arts and carry ons.
So does Dave Mustaine.
Well, Filipino kids also tend to excel at electric guitar. There's this weird sort of heavy metal, kind of speed metal subculture
That's
among
cool.
the Filipino. Oh,
and
cool.
they can be plucked out of a YouTube video and end up fronting Journey.
Was the head of Journey? Who's that?
Yeah, there's a whole documentary about this kid. When Steve Perry left Journey, they were adrift for a long time. They were looking for someone, and then someone showed him a YouTube video of a Filipino kid in the Philippines.
In the Philippines.
In a Journey tribute band. He couldn't speak much English.
But he could sing.
He's the lead singer of Journey now.
Really? That's cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool story.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You know what? I don't think we're going to reach resolution on this because I can't decide still if it's good for the Jews to have Jewish neighborhoods. I know I'd like to see a Jewish neighborhood. I'd like to walk around in one, see what it feels like.
Yeah, you've seen one, you've seen them all.
I've never seen one. I don't even know where's the nearest one. L.A.?
Yeah.
I could go to L.A. and see a Jewish neighborhood.
That's not so exciting in L.A. because you can't really walk around in L.A.
Where would I go in New York
You'd have
to
to
see one? I have
drive
to go to Great Neck?
No, you just go to New York.
Just New York in general, but I don't think all of New York is a Jewish neighborhood. There's parts of
think it
Brooklyn
is.
that used to be. Really?
Yeah, I think it is.
That's why Jesse Jackson called it Jaime Town, and yet
That's right.
never got called on it except by me
Jew
right
York,
now. Jew York.
Jew York,
Yeah.
University.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like JUSC.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to give Jesse Jackson a hard time for saying Jaime Town.
I so
gotta-
much to give him a hard time.
Really?
For. He's a flim-flam.
Yeah, whatever.
Man.
I'm not a big Jesse Jackson fan, but and I don't want to be insulted by anyone, but I gotta say, there's I like to use a little flourish and embellishment when I talk to people and sort of say things in such a way that gets their attention.
Oh, you think that's what he's doing?
Well, I mean, he's
As
a
presidential
world-class
candidate, you
orator.
think
I
that's
think
what
he
he was
knows
doing?
how to get people. No, I think he is.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to give him something. Now screw that.
He doesn't
Jesse,
need anything from us.
You
Jesse,
got a strike against you. Forget
screw
it,
you,
man.
Jesse. And your son.
Yeah.
My favorite Jackson is Reggie Jackson, of course, former Oakland A's outfielder and
I've
MVP.
heard of him. Yeah.
All right, well,
Michael Jackson. He's
I'm more of a Tito man myself.
Oh, come
Tito played the bass.
on.
He was funky.
What a Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson's an American tragedy.
What tragedy,
He
man?
died
I
when he
hear
was
that-
50 years old. Isolated,
Yeah.
drugged up, sad. It's tragic. Come on. Come
Still,
on.
when I hear, you know,
I know he's the
Shake
king
Your
of
Body
pop.
Onto the Ground, I get
Off
out
the
and
Wall's a great
dance,
album.
man.
Yeah.
That thing, I just get Thriller. I swear to God, that song comes on.
And you
know,
just start dancing.
Yeah, I'm like parking the car and it's in the radio, and all of a sudden I see people walking like zombies to the office. I'm like, what the hell? Everyone's tuned in the same radio station. They're all turning into zombies. I mean, what has that type of effect? You know, it's Michael Jackson's great.
Yeah, and dead. All right. Well, you stand by it. Jewish neighborhood good for the Jews?
I'm going to say Jewish neighborhood's good for the Jews because, you know, the places where Jews are free, Jewish culture is alive and well, that's all good. But it's not as good as all Jews being in Israel.
Okay.
As long as you got Jews in exile, Jewish neighborhood's good, but better for them all to be in Israel.
We're going to go with that, and we're going to wrap it up right now. But before we do, I want to say something to Sharon and my mom and Sam and Kimmel. We don't have any way of knowing how many people listen to this. It might just be 4 people. It might be more. What I would love is a little feedback. With our little email address that I made all by myself, isitgoodforthejews@gmail.com. There's a little envelope on the website you can click on and send us some stuff because we have no idea what you're thinking.
Actually, Sharon did send me some feedback.
Oh, great.
She said we should try to be funny.
We're doing our best, Sharon. Until then, from the Twilight Lounge, this is Good for the Jews. Thanks, Mom, Sam, and Kimmel. And that's it for this week.
Come on! This one's going out to the fabulous fleas. Come on!
I know what you can do. Let us lay the fun on you.
Along with the BBC. You ready to party? All right.
We made the perfect day when we played the night of sun. She said she couldn't stay when her night had just begun. She wanted me to know what she didn't know herself. Said I was one among others. Hey now, that's something else. She played a vocal mission. I played the cosmic heart. Wanted to paint her picture. She said don't even start. She said love's like a drug and that this was chemistry. But with these chemicals then, how is this good for me? Her life gets better, she read. Her man goes out of his head. Like birds of a feather, so we bled. Let's go together. And she said, so what's the altitude? I said, it's out of sight. What's with the attitude? And she said, it's alright. So what's the altitude? I said, it's out of sight. What's with the attitude? And she said, it's alright. She said, let's get away now. Let's go down by the bay. She turned her hand my way now. Watch out, what you say now? Now the things you've been through make it seem like nothing could ever really last forever. But if you try, girl, we can do some things. She gave me headphones. Said, have you heard this sound? I think I've heard this one is totally underground. And I wouldn't let her go then. She wouldn't let me go. Just ask the neighbors, man, it's unbelievable. I played the morning rising, she played the setting sun. She said she couldn't stay when her night had just begun. So what's the altitude? I said it's out of sight. What's with the attitude? And she said it's alright. So what's the altitude? I said it's out of sight. Without abandon, we dance, we party all night. We party all night. We party all night. We party all night.
Along with the BBC.
We made the perfect day when we played the night of sun. She said she couldn't stay when her night had just begun. She wanted me to know what she didn't know herself. Said I was one among others. Hey now, that's something else. We played a vocal mission to play the cosmic sky. How can we make the distance? You've always known my eye. We're letting people know what we now know ourselves. That we are one among others. Hey now, that's something else. She gave me headphones. Said, have you heard this sound? You know I've heard this one, girl. Let's get out of town. This love is like a drug and we bonded chemically. We're letting you know better, living through chemistry.
Y'all ready to party? Yeah! One, two. Party people in the place. We want to get everything live. Only live is the place to be. Funky Penguin and Funky President, but hit Funky President first, alright? Got it? Yeah!